The learning outcome for this module is to understand how to be a more successful negotiator through preparation, finding common ground, and managing your emotions. Let's get started.
We're going to talk about the action steps about how to be a more skillful negotiator through preparation, finding common ground, and managing emotions. The first thing that you need to do is understand you need to prepare. For all negotiations, preparation is absolutely crucial. It's how you come to the negotiation understanding what the situation is and what you want to get out of it. So to understand the situation, start by making 4 lists. The first list is what only I know about the situation. What are especially what are the key pieces of information that you are the only one who has information or access to. The second list is what the other person or group could know that you don't know. There may be financial information, there may be product specification information, there may be service information, etc. The third list is what both of us know about the situation. So, what's out there in the public, what's open knowledge that everybody knows about. And then last, what neither of you know about the situation. See if you can identify gaps in knowledge that's impossible for anybody to know about, or assumedly impossible for anybody to know about. After you've created those 4 lists, create 4 more. And these 4 lists are about your expectations for the outcome. The first list is clearly define what is it that you would love to have happen. If you got your perfect world scenario, what would that be? The second one is, what could I live with? What would be a scenario or an outcome where you're like, okay, that I can live with that. Not the best, but I can live with it. The third one is, what would be the worst possible outcome for you? What would you loathe? What would you really hate to have happen? And then the fourth list is, what will you do if you can't come to a negotiated agreement? The last thing that you want to do in your preparation is to determine how important your future relationship is with the other person. Is only the outcome important to this particular negotiation? Do you never expect to see these guys again? If so, you could probably, take a hardball stance and, maybe get in their face, or, use some tactics that may not, be best for a future relationship. However, if, you intend on working with the person in the future, if it's a client that you like to keep, if it's, a colleague that you intend to work with in the future, you really want to take an approach that prioritizes respect for the other person and communication. The next step is to set the stage. When the negotiation begins, and really even before the negotiation begins, you really should try to build rapport with the other group or the other person by engaging them. Talk about things other than the negotiated topic. I mean, this could be small talk, or this could be, how business is doing, etc. Get to know them. Help them to feel comfortable. And try to create a friendly environment. Also, when when you come into the negotiation and you're actually physically thinking about how you want to set things up, if you don't want to create a confrontational setting, don't sit across the table from them. Sit next to them, because it literally creates a barrier between you and them, right? Then open the discussion and set the boundaries on what you're about to agree on, like what are the key pieces you're going to agree on, and what's outside the scope of your conversation. Make a clear distinction, and you could write it down, make sure everybody agrees with it. And then also enumerate the issues that need agreement. And then you can state your goals and the reasons why you have those goals. Next, you want to try to find common ground. You want to identify the important aspects of the negotiated issue to break it down into smaller decisions, because if you can come to smaller pieces that lead up to that greater negotiated decision between you two, it really builds momentum. You can ask the other people that you're negotiating with, which of these smaller components is most important to them. And then, based on their answer, you can determine if there's anything that you want to concede in those areas of importance to them, or if there's anything you can trade. While you're talking, always be on the lookout for common ground and address the other party's interests first. Try to sidestep their positions and look for what is they're actually interested. You can always do this by asking their perspective on things like, can you tell me a little bit more about your views on that particular situation? Or why is it that you feel that way? Or what led you to that position? This is how you try to draw out what their interests are behind their positions. Make sure that you can restate, give them feedback to the things that you're hearing to make sure that you have a clear understanding, and ask as many questions as you can to try to figure out what they're interested in. And then, as I was saying earlier, throughout the conversation, identify an area where you can agree. It's often, really helpful to think of yourself almost as a facilitator rather than a good negotiator at this point, because you're sort of trying to facilitate them, coming out and saying, hey, we can agree on this. Because when you start to find those agreements, say, hey, that's great, let's agree on this, then write it down and put it where you can both see it, because these little agreements build momentum along the way. And as you build momentum, it becomes easier and easier to find common ground and to find agreement on the larger issues, or the small ones build into that larger issue. The next thing to remember is to keep a level head. Even if there are no hard feelings in the room between you and the person you're negotiating with, or the groups that are negotiating together, negotiations can get emotional. It can be, this is the classic form of a modern battle, right? But you should really never lose your cool during a negotiation, because it makes you look ineffective. But we know this is easier said than done. The challenge is that when we're experiencing intense emotions, information about our world is channeled to different parts of our brain, and it's called the amygdala, and it triggers a fight or flight response. And so our brains become physically unable to reason. You want to try to avoid that happening. And you can do this by rehearsing a more effective reaction. You can actually recognize when this is happening through practice and subvert it, or step aside it when you feel it happening, or you can even give yourself a go-to phrase when you feel it happening so that you can just break out of that trigger. And as I said just a few seconds ago, it's really important that you practice this rather than just thinking about it. You got to practice it, because this is negotiation, like any other business skill or any other skill in your life. It's a muscle, and the more that you practice it, the more that you will be able to actually implement what it is that you practice. Whenever you're in doubt, if you feel like this emotional trap coming on, or you feel like you're in a space where you're not sure what to do, try to always ask a question instead of making a statement. Because when you're asking a question, not only you're buying yourself time, but you're trying to crack open that iceberg that you're created for yourself, and you're looking for more information to help you sort of move through it. Finally, look out for things when you hit roadblocks, or try to identify these roadblocks. When you first come into the negotiation, you might want to ask the group or the person you're negotiating with what deal breakers exist for them. Write them down. Maybe write them down in big and put them in a flip chart or on a whiteboard or something. And then consider them one at a time with each other and ask why it's a deal breaker. If you don't seem to be getting anywhere, if there's so many deal breakers it doesn't look like there's going to be any movement, you can start by finding an agreement with them by saying, can we both acknowledge that we're having some difficulty reaching agreement? And then you can ask a simple question: is there a better process for moving forward with this? Is this really, are we in this room, and is it the right time for this? If you can't reach an agreement, even if you can't even reach that agreement, consider whether or not you should walk away, either temporarily or permanently. Because if you can't come to agreement, you need to ask yourself if you can get what you want some other way. If this is a service that you're trying to buy, or you're trying to buy a product from someone, or if you're trying to negotiate some financial deal, or is there some other way for you to get to the point where you need to be without this conversation, without this negotiation? And then, if you do want to keep trying with them, identify a tentative agreement with the understanding that you'll both take some time to think about it, and then agree on a time for a next meeting. And in the intervening time between the time you leave and that next meeting, ask some uninvolved parties for the suggestion on how to reach an agreement. And obviously, with a negotiation, if you do ultimately close a deal that you're satisfied with, make sure you clarify it before you leave the room. Absolutely make sure everybody's in clear agreement with what's happening. Document it in writing, and then make sure both parties have a copy of the agreement.
We hope that you found this module on skillful negotiation useful. Remember, there's a complete transcript of this video below, and there are downloadable takeaways that you can use offline. Also, please leave us a comment below about how you're a more skillful negotiator today, or leave us a comment about how we can make this section better. Thanks.